Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me for another video. This one is just something I thought I would put up after having the good interview with Glenn Hudson on Garabandal. As we know, when we speak of Garabandal, the one thing that comes is about the warning, the prophesied event, the great illumination of conscience. And just a couple of weeks ago, I read the majority of this book after the warning to 2038 by Bruce Cyr, if I pronounce his name correctly. Now, I haven't read such a genre of this type of book regarding end times prophecies or taking all the Marian apparitions together and prophecies from other mystics and saints and things. But after relaunching the channel back in just January, there a couple of months ago, things seems to have been picking up a lot in a way it never did before on the channel and the people I've been meeting in recent times. So I thought I would get a little refresher for myself and give this book a read. I haven't read it from page to page. Even the author does say to go to the main part where he condenses them all together. And that's the part that stood out for me because that's exactly what I've been doing in the videos in the channel. And again, I urge every viewer to go through the Marian Apparitions playlist and watch the videos in chronological order. And that playlist is going to keep adding up as time goes on and new videos are published, basically putting things together. Because the world is going bonkers. The church seems to be going bonkers, saying no more about the German ruling just yesterday. But let's have a look into what I would say about this book. I'm no professional, I'm not an expert, although some people say so. I just have a great knowledge over the years of natural inclination into the Marian apparitions, the prophecies, and the whole state of the church where we're at and where things might be, and quite an obvious way of seeing things. So I'm going to give a little critique on this book because others told me to read it, and I'm about to tell you what I think of it. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, the first thing that stood out for me in the opening pages was the fact that this book is the 11th print, which was updated this February 2023. And no doubt the reason for that is just several weeks after the passing of Pope Benedict XVI on New Year's Eve 2022. And with the name of the warning and thinking of Garabandal straight away with Benedict passing, Garabandal trended straight away in January in some of the platforms, didn't it? And again, I've had Glenn Hudson on speaking about Garabandal in the recent interview. Now, the reason for that is because back in the 60s, the girl says that Our Lady told them that it would be four more popes after John the 23rd, and that fourth pope was Benedict the 16th. But my impression straight away of the fact that it's the 11th print, some of the prints came in the same years, such as two in 2018, two in 2019, three in 2021, and now this one in 2023. And I'm like, is the author just reprinting every time something new happens where he can add a few pages here and there and make it fit to whatever it is he's trying to get across on the book? The one thing that did stand out for me in page 2022 is he speaks about the 10 secrets of Medjugorje. And he goes in for the first three secrets, speaking about the three admonitions, and then five punishments. And the final two secrets are the two chastisements from God. And one thing, he's speaking my language when you can blend the Garabandal prophecies and fit them into the Medjugorje secrets, especially those first three, which would be the warning, a day of outpouring of the Holy Spirit, and then the third secret is the visible miraculous sign left at Medjugorje, just as the one described to be left at Garabandal. But as you can see here, I've got quite a few markers and the things that I did want to pick out. One other thing that I have mentioned before, again, in this convenience of time, is the coincidences or the God incidences, which would probably better described for them. Not only are we in a new era with Francis, according to Garabandal, now that the four popes have passed since John the 23rd, The last two conveniently came at the time of the prophesied popes of Anne Catherine Emmerich, when we had the two popes. It also conveniently came at the time now where we're at the end of St Malachy's list, and we're beginning the 50th anniversary of the message of Akita, where Our Lady spoke about the devil infiltrating the church to the highest ranks, where you would see cardinals against cardinals and bishops against bishops. But he does touch on the prophecy of St Malachy, as we know we're at the end of the popes. But usually I wouldn't put much emphasis on that, really. It was just one of those extra things to add in for a little, a little sprinkling of finesse. But he was good friends with St Bernard of Clairvaux, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And he actually died with St Bernard at his side. In fact, it says here he died in the arms of St Bernard. And with St Bernard himself being a great saint, obviously St Malachy kept some good company back in the day, and maybe we should give him a little bit more credit than it probably isn't getting. But one other thing that stood out for me, if we can just go off on a little different subject from the prophecies, although it's all linked, is the banking systems. Who's got the power? Britain, as a military point of view, apparently the whole military personnel can fit in Wembley Football Stadium. So we've definitely lost the way of the great empire in the terms of Britain. But the fact that when he goes into detail speaking about, well, why is Britain still in the G7? Where does it still have power or influence? And it's actually in the banking system. I didn't realise the Bank of England to this day still decides the price of gold. And when you're bringing in a lot of the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the Morgans, and all that stuff, we're here from Bilderberg groups and the Briggs and everything else, Britain still very much controls a lot when it comes to gold prices, when it comes to the banking system. And it got me thinking as well of Rishi Sunak wanting Britain as presidency of the G7's countries and economy, bringing in digital assets and that. So Britain is the president of the G7s when it's coming to this new stuff on the way. And there's a lot rolling out now with smart cities and everything else that I want to get touching on soon enough as well. The other thing that stood out for me with this book is the fact that he does bring in a bit of his own personal prophecies, or what he's like in some sort of charismatic spirit. And I'd rather an author wouldn't do that, especially when there's no formal thing going in there with the church and that, compared to a few other apparition sites or mystics or visionaries where they have imprimaturs and things. So that kind of gets cast away a good bit as well. One thing, a major thing that he actually misses out on, and I don't recall seeing it anywhere in the book, certainly not at the point where he was given clear information on Garabandal and the times that we're in. He fails to mention about the prophecy of the Pope going to Moscow. Remember, again, in the interview with Glenn, and we've heard many times in the past, there was clearly three things leading to the great warning, the illumination of conscience, as given by the girls of Garabandal. We're speaking about communism returning. The warning will coincide with a great synod. And the last one would be when the Pope returns from Moscow, it all kicks off. He does not mention that at all in this book, which I was very surprised about. And another thing he does get about it is the fact that these things, the great miracle that will happen on the feast of a martyr of the Eucharist. Now, there's been many theories of known martyrs or saints that could fall on the feast days, as with the description given of Garabandal. And he does note it here on page 243, where he puts a lot of it down to, I don't know how to pronounce that name, Hermenegild's death. But I even mentioned this one to Glenn Hudson privately, and straight away he sends me back files and all the rest of it, and why it cannot be this one due to the age and the background. And the fact that some of the dates even predicted that where the warning and things could fall on, they're in uneven years. And again, Mario Loli told us it was going to be on an even year. So there's a lot of due diligence. It could have been a lot better in terms of some of the Garabandal stuff, but there is quite a lot of stuff there, and one could easily be convinced of whatever research the author has done in order to look at future dates of possibilities. But as soon as you hear from someone else who's very much all over this and has been for decades, such as Glenn Hudson, it quickly just goes away in a puff of smoke, which is a bit of a shame. There's one thing that really did stand out for me. Now, when you've already had examples where someone else can refute it quite quickly because they're experts on it, such as Garabandal, you don't know what to take from the author, therefore, with anything else in the book. But in chapter 43, we speak about the great Catholic monarch, the restoration of the monarchy, where it'll be the great return of the monarch who will go about and spreading Catholicism again with the Pope's blessing, a Pope chosen directly by God in the great times after the tribulation, where we'll go for quite some time without a Pope due to all that's happening in the world. Now, it even makes a clear prediction of who that future angelic Pope will be and who the future monarch is going to be in these times. Because remember, he's given himself the timeline of where he believes the warning is going to occur, and everything, therefore, is going to unfold with the secrets of Medjugorje, the events contained in them, which coincide with the events of Garabandal and other different mystics and saints have predicted. They're all coming together, repeating the same thing. So I've always said this decade's going to reveal a lot, and I don't think we're too far off from seeing a lot of things that are impending, because things are going so fast in the world and the church that it's as clear as the nose in your face. But the one thing that really did stand out for me, and if this was true, then it was an eyebrow raiser. He says that on the back of the book, he gives you Father Zlatko's Sudak as the future pope. He's a stigmatist priest in Croatia. And he's also given this chap here as the future monarch, Ferdinand Zvonimir Habsburg Lothringen. Excuse me for that pronunciation. The author believes this is the future monarch of the East and the West. These two major leaders are predicted to rise up in the 2030s at the beginning of the sixth church age of peace. Now, he goes in about the fact that there are these 7 church ages and we're at the end of the 5th. So the thought of the Antichrist in our midst right now in 2023 or within the next decade or two, according to this author, it says it's just not going to be the case. The Antichrist is centuries away. And right now what's happening is this spirit with the devil, the 100 years reign that given by God when Pope Leo had his mystical experience in 1884, where Saint was granted the century. That's what's coming to an end with the triumph of the Immaculate Heart. But he's putting the Antichrist way, way in the future. Could be right, it could be wrong. But we're in a new era when it comes to speaking of other Marian apparitions for sure. Now, this great Catholic monarch and some of the things this man's picking up, the one that I really liked was the fact that he gives the family tree all the way back to Charles von Habsburg, born in 1887. Now, I'll just read a little bit here. In 1914, with the assassination of Archduke Francis Ferdinand in Sarajevo, triggering the First World War, nephew Charles became heir presumptive to Austria and Hungary. He was a general field marshal in the army and became the supreme commander of the whole army in 1916. The father of Pope John Paul II was a soldier in this army. This father called his son Carol after Charles, known as Carol. Anyway, Charles gets put away in an island when all the uprising happens. Now, what ends up going on with this holy emperor, Charles I? The family line goes all the way down to this chap here. And what stood out for me, remember Pope John Paul II, Karol Wojtyła, was named after Charles I, because John Paul II, his father was in this army. Now, when the author gets all this way down here, what ends up happening in, where are we? In 1972, Archduke Rudolph, the youngest son of Charles I, had been present when the body of his father, Charles, was exhumed at Madeira and confirmed that the body of his father was incorrupt. This brought about the beatification of Blessed Emperor Charles by John Paul II, with Anne Catherine Emmerich's beatification on that same day in 2003. Since Charles I, the lineage of the eldest is in line to the throne as the future monarch. Otto von Habsburg was born November 20th, 1912 and died July 4th, 2011. He was the Crown Prince of Austria and was the oldest son of Charles I. Then we go from Karl von Habsburg down to Ferdinand, who was born on June 21st, 1997, and is the only son of Karl. The author says, "This is the great Catholic monarch who will act decisively in the 2030s. In 2023, Ferdinand will be 26 years old. This is the same year that he will experience the outpouring of the Holy Spirit, wherein the awareness of his calling may become very apparent." Now, I've got another book with this type of same genre stuff, and I read it years ago, maybe a good 10, 15, yeah, at least 10 years ago now. And from what I remember of it, the author in that book basically says this new Catholic monarch is hiding in a monastery, waiting for the moment when God tells him to step out. So who do you believe here and all the rest of it is one between the other. But what really I'll really like if this is true is you had Charles I back a century ago, a really holy emperor who was ostracized by the people, only then to have his body exhumed in 1972, and he was incorrupt, the sign of holiness. Now, when he led the army back in the day, the father of Karol Wojtyła, who was in that army, named Karol, his son, after Charles, who was known as Karol, Charles I, who is already a blessed, but it's Karol Wojtyła who becomes John Paul II, the Pope, and beatifies the Emperor Charles I, who he's named after. And in the same day, he also beatifies not one and only Anne Catherine Emmerich. I've done a video on her great prophecies. If you don't know who Anne Catherine Emmerich is, watch the videos, because she was the one that gave us all the Passion of the Christ detail that inspired the movie by Mel Gibson. She's also, thanks to her, it was thanks to her writings that we found the house of Our Lady in St John in Ephesus. And she's the one that speaks about the time of the two popes, the split in the church, and many other things. She's known as one of the greatest mystics and visionaries of the church. And she's beatified. I mean, for all the people to be beatified in the same day as her, it's the emperor. And this author believes his lineage right down to Ferdinand is the future monarch to be restored. Now, I spoke to a dear friend of Father Sudak just a week ago, and says, "Oh, guess what I'm reading? Guess who's on the book?" I said, "Oh, why is he on there?" And I told her that he's predicted by the author to be the future angelic pope. So, "Oh, he's heard all that. He doesn't believe he's the one." So again, what do you take from it? Now, I have written down just a few points as well here as the pros and cons to this book. I just find that there's like nearly a dozen prints and reprints all the time, as if he's adding things to follow the signs and then republish again. So I don't see that as a great thing, although it's something we do need to keep vigilance to, the signs of the times. But I just find that when you're doing it constantly or that, it's like, what are we on top of here? He has missed some crucial things out, especially when it comes to Garabandal. So pros. He sees Garabandal prophecies of events merging with Medjugorje 10 secrets, as do I. He also speaks of similar prophecies and apparitions as myself. Plus, he has more from saints and mystics. This is a great glossary of finding sources, as he has done, from St Bridget of Sweden to the Marian apparitions, right through to Anne Catherine Emmerich and many others. There's a lot of detail to be found in here, and they all focus again on the same stuff highlighted in Garabandal, and which will probably be revealed through the Medjugorje events when the secrets are revealed. The other thing he actually highlights, and it kind of got my attention, is the fact that the last few weeks I was watching some other channel, Funky Prepper, I tap into now and again, and he's been doing quite a few videos here in England round about a lot to do with the migrant crisis and a lot to do with what's going on with the 15-minute cities and all the rest of it. We're seeming to be losing so much control, and it's a biblical portions and biblical numbers that so many are coming to Britain now. And he highlights, especially if the data is correct that he's sharing with us, that these migrants are 80% of them fighting age men. No wives, no children, and for all they're running from. And they're put up in every hotel round about. And this circle that's bringing it all in is just keep them coming. The floodgates are open. And it's like, what are they doing? What are they all doing? And I'm not putting an opinion on it just yet where I think I need to know more information, so I remain silent but objective. But when I'm watching a couple of videos about this stuff happening right now, and then I'm reading certain pages in this book, highlights about a bloody revolution in England. It speaks about men of Baird. It speaks about a few other prophecies that I've been made aware of in the past. Even the royal family will narrowly escape all that's to rise up in England. So we're speaking about the future still. And there seems to be more hostilities towards the new King, Charles, than there ever was before against the family entirely, including anything against the Queen. She seemed to have had the respect of many, whereas he doesn't seem to happen the same with these protests. So there's definitely room for thought one way or another when you're seeing these parallels between the timing of reading this book and what people are starting to highlight on their platforms and YouTube. But I might look into that some depth in the future. So is he right with the monarchy stuff? Again, we're getting conflicting theories between these types of genres on the books. I didn't read the history stuff from the Reformation to Napoleon to the Freemasonry stuff. We're aware of all that. But it's great to see so many resources in terms of where it's all pointing for these same things. You can read it. It's not going to do you any harm. I would actually be up for speaking to the author because you probably get more from person face to face. So if he's ever watching this video or you know how I can get in touch with him, it'd be good to maybe get in an interview on the channel. But after a while reading that book with all the doom and gloom and everything else of the world, the events, it's like watching the movie 2012, tectonic plates moving, tsunamis, comets, you name it, it's all in this book. And for the first time in many, many years, I get that knot back in the stomach about the fear of it almost. And that's something I haven't had for many years. I know some people probably get that when it's the doom and gloom and certain prophecies and chastisements. I got over that a long time ago, and it's probably thanks to getting deeper in love with the faith in God. But after saturating my mind for a couple of weeks reading the core part of this, I had enough to know, right, that's more than enough. And yeah, the pros and cons are there. He's speaking my language when you can see Garabandal, Medjugorje, Akita, Fatima, you know, and a few others fitting in there. But afterwards, I'm like, I need to read the Bible. I need to pray. I need to get back to living the messages, get back to living the gospel, the real faith of things. That's not something you want to saturate your mind on for too long. Although if you ever need it for research or picking things up or try to remember one that you couldn't, you'll find it in the book. It's good for that. But when you're getting 12 prints and it seems to be adjusting with the times to fit with the times, I don't really know about that. That doesn't sit with me well, and that's what stood out straight away. So yeah, take with that what you want. I think now I've got enough books in this type of genre where I don't need to be getting any more. It's not something that's going to feed the soul in a good way, but it's something to keep us alert for where we are, and we can always look back on it when we're looking at the times we're in ourselves. So it's not probably the best review. It's not probably the best things I can think about because I did complete it a couple of weeks ago and I've been putting it off because of other projects and things. But I wanted to get it out there because people did recommend it to me. Some people have left comments about it already, and I can understand why it's an overload. So yeah, if it's something that's going to upset you, if it's something that's going to put the fear in you, probably best avoid it. But for those that are very interested in maybe picking things together, he does give some tables and some timelines that's actually worth keeping a point of note on. So yeah, let me know what you think about the book if you've read it. Let me know any of your thoughts or comments. You know where to leave them in the comment section below. And as always, give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and feel free to share this and any other video with people that need to hear it for all its hand in the world. They need to understand why, and that's the purpose of these videos. Till next time, friends, God bless.